That morning, I left the apartment a little later than usual. I hadn't eaten breakfast, barely had time to brush my hair, and forgot to take the umbrella I always kept by the door. But none of that mattered. The moment I stepped outside, I paused for breath. The air was crisp, and for the first time in weeks, the spring sunshine broke through the endless clouds that hung over Portland like a wet curtain. It was warm, not the heavy heat of summer, but a soft kind of warmth that gently wrapped around my shoulders, whispering that maybe today wouldn't be so bad. I walked faster, clutching my tote bag and checking the time. Only 2 minutes left before my shift at the pharmacy started. Luckily, it was just a few blocks away, tucked between a bakery and an old hardware store. As I passed the trees lining Hawthorne Boulevard, I noticed tiny green buds breaking through the winter-gray branches. Birds were chirping. Strangers smiled at each other. It felt like the world had finally exhaled. "Good morning. You're glowing today," my coworker Lisa said as I walked through the door. "Let's see if the customers let me keep that glow," I joked, slipping into my white coat. I went straight to the front to help with the early rush, the usual group of elderly regulars coming in for their prescriptions. I didn't mind. There was a rhythm to it, and I liked knowing I was helping people. Then my phone rang. I stepped away to answer, thinking it might be Michael. But instead, a deep male voice spoke. "Hello, is this Julia Dawson?"
Yes.
"Who's calling?" "This is Brian Simmons. I'm Michael Dawson's supervisor." The smile on my face disappeared. "What happened?" "There was an accident at the site. Your husband was hurt. He's been taken to Portland General." My heart dropped. I could barely speak. "Is he alive?" "Yes, but you should get there now." I didn't even hang up properly. I turned to Lisa, my hands shaking. "I have to go. It's Michael. There was an accident." She didn't ask questions. "Go. I'll cover for you." And just like that, the sunshine was gone. The drive to Portland General felt endless, though I barely noticed the streets flying past. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly they turned white. I kept hearing the man's voice in my head. "Your husband was hurt." Hurt how? Hurt where? Why was he even on a job site? Michael was an architectural designer. He made plans, met clients, dealt with zoning permits, not hauling materials or climbing scaffolding. None of this made sense. When I ran through the automatic glass doors of the ER, my lungs were burning and my legs shaking. At the reception desk, I barely managed to speak. "Michael Dawson." I think he was just brought in." The nurse nodded. "He's in surgery. Trauma team took him back about 30 minutes ago."
Surgery.
I sank into the nearest chair like the floor had disappeared. My ears buzzed. My heart pounded so loudly I couldn't hear what she said next. Something about signing papers and waiting upstairs. I nodded.
I signed.
I followed. Then came the silence. That awful hospital silence, where even the ticking clock sounds like a drum. I sat alone in a waiting room with beige walls, plastic chairs, and a vending machine that hummed too loud. Every 5 minutes, I checked my phone. Every 10, I stood up to look down the hallway. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Finally, a man in scrubs walked toward me. He looked tired, his hair flat under his surgical cap, eyes red behind his glasses. "Mrs. Dawson?" I stood up so fast, I nearly knocked over the chair.
Yes.
"I'm here." "Is he?" "He made it through surgery," the doctor said. "Your husband suffered a serious spinal injury. A large piece of construction material fell and hit his lower back." "Will he be okay?" I asked. "Will he walk?" The doctor hesitated. I saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke. "We stabilized him. We relieved the swelling. That part went as well as we hoped. But it's too soon to know about long-term mobility. There's a chance of paralysis." My mouth opened, but no words came. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood there, frozen, hoping he'd say something different if I waited long enough. "He's resting now. We'll know more when he wakes up." He gave a small, tired smile. I nodded and somehow managed to thank him. When he walked away, I sat down again and finally broke. I covered my face with my hands, and the tears came fast and hot. The sunny morning felt like it happened years ago. They let me see him the next morning. I hadn't slept. I spent the night curled in one of those awful waiting room chairs. My neck hurt, my back ached, and my mind kept running through the worst possible thoughts. When the nurse said he was awake and moved to recovery, I stood up and followed her silently. He was in a private room now. Clean, white, and too quiet. Machines beeped gently nearby. He looked pale, thinner, like the accident had taken more than just blood from him. His eyes opened as I walked in. "Julia," he said, voice weak. "I'm here," I whispered, rushing to his side. I took his cold, heavy hand and kissed his forehead. "How do you feel?" I asked, though I already knew. Michael didn't answer right away. He looked down at the blanket covering his legs, then back up at me, his face clouded with something I couldn't name. Shame? Fear? Maybe both. "I can't feel them," he finally said. "My legs. I can't feel anything below the waist." The words hit hard. I held my breath and forced myself to sound calm. "It could be the anesthesia," I said, brushing my thumb over his hand. "The doctor said it's too soon to tell. You just had surgery. These things take time." "I asked the nurse," he whispered. "She wouldn't say much. Just told me the doctor would explain later. But I know something's wrong." I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I couldn't. I leaned closer and said what I needed him to hear, even if I wasn't sure I believed it yet. "We're going to get through this. You're not alone. I'll do whatever it takes to help you walk again, Michael. I promise." He gave a small nod, then closed his eyes again. I stepped outside to make the calls. The first one was to Natalie, our daughter. She was still in college, almost 100 miles away. I didn't want to scare her, but she needed to know. She cried softly, then said she could come home.
No, sweetheart.
"You focus on your studies." "I've got this," I said, pretending my voice wasn't shaking. The second call was harder. When I told Agnes what happened, her voice changed right away. "I'll be on the next bus. Someone needs to take care of my son." I tried to talk her out of it, but it was no use. She was coming. At exactly 7 a.m. the next morning, the doorbell rang. I opened it in my robe, hair still damp from a rushed shower. There she was, Agnes Dawson, standing straight with a suitcase in one hand and a garment bag in the other, like she was checking in at a hotel. "I took the earliest Greyhound," she said without saying hello. "He needs me." Before I could reply, she walked right past me into the apartment. Her perfume followed her like a warning. She dropped her bags by the hallway closet and looked around the living room with a frown, as if judging everything I'd done wrong since her last visit. "I'll take the guest room," she said. "Or rather, that couch, since you never thought to have a proper space ready." I bit my tongue. "Can I make you some coffee?" "No need. I brought my own grounds. Yours is too weak." I forced a smile, acting like it wasn't already unbearable. By mid-morning, I had called the pharmacy and asked for a few days off. My manager understood, thankfully. I didn't explain that the time off wasn't only for Michael. It was also because I now had to care for another person, one who didn't respect boundaries or silence. At the hospital, Agnes turned into someone else. She walked into Michael's room like a general checking on her troops. She smoothed his blanket, adjusted his bed, scolded the nurses for not coming fast enough. In an hour, she knew every nurse's name and used them like commands. "This mattress is too firm. My son has a spinal injury, not a paper cut," she snapped at one of them. I tried to step in, to soften things, but it felt useless, like trying to stop a storm with a broom. Every time I spoke, she interrupted. Every suggestion I made, she repeated louder, as if it had been her idea all along. Michael stayed quiet, his eyes moving back and forth between us like someone watching a tennis match he didn't want to see. He never said a word. Maybe he was too tired. Or maybe he didn't want to choose sides. Agnes had already picked hers, and it wasn't mine. Watching her boss the nurses around and fix Michael's pillow for the third time in 5 minutes, I felt that old, familiar tension return. The kind that never really left, just got buried under years of fake smiles and swallowed words. It wasn't always like this. Actually, that's not true. It was always like this. The first time Michael brought me home to meet her, I knew I wasn't what she wanted. I had dressed nicely, brought a bottle of wine, even baked a pie from scratch because Michael said she loved homemade things. She didn't touch the pie. She looked me over and said, "So you're the one. Small-town girl with big dreams, is that it?" I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Agnes never hid how she felt. Every dinner, every visit, she found a new way to remind me I didn't fit in. Her words were always sharp, like a scalpel. They didn't hurt at first, but they always left a mark. The worst moment came one night before Michael proposed. I couldn't sleep, so I got up for a glass of water and overheard them talking in the kitchen. The lights were off, but I could hear them clearly. "She's not the one," Agnes said. "She's not good enough. She's not from our circle. She didn't go to the right schools. She has no real connections. You could do so much better." "She's kind, Mom," Michael said. "She loves me." "She's convenient," Agnes replied. "That's not the same." I stood behind the wall, frozen, holding a glass, my heart breaking. I should have left then, but I didn't. A week later, Michael got down on one knee in our tiny apartment and asked me to marry him. And I said yes. Because I loved him. I wanted to believe love was enough. Our wedding was small but beautiful. Friends, a few coworkers, and yes, Agnes. She wore gray like she was at a funeral. She sat stiffly during the ceremony, didn't smile in any photos. Then came the toast. She raised her glass and said, "To Julia, you've managed to land yourself a wonderful man. He's loyal, hardworking, and far more generous than most. And to Michael, well, sweetheart, I always hoped you'd end up with someone extraordinary. But sometimes life gives us surprises." People laughed, uncomfortable. I smiled through it, holding my breath. Because that's what you do when your mother-in-law tells a room full of people that her son settled for you. The days blurred together. I ran between the hospital and home, cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, handling calls from the pharmacy, and trying to sound calm when talking to Natalie so she wouldn't worry. Agnes stayed in the apartment, waiting for updates like she was royalty, complaining about doctors, and pacing like she owned the place. Michael mostly slept. He was on pain meds, groggy, quiet. He nodded when I spoke, squeezed my hand sometimes, but he felt far away. There was a silence in him that neither of us could break. One morning, Dr. Lee pulled me aside. "We've